morning, everybody. My name is Terry. I'm one of the pastors here. And if it's your first time here on the floor, in the balcony, or for all of you that are watching online today, welcome. We're really excited that you joined us today and are a part of our church today as we start a brand new message series entitled Subtitles. Isn't it true that many times as we're maybe driving our cars, as we're walking through a shopping area, or we're at home, there are many thoughts and ideas and conversations that we have in our minds. And then sometimes those conversations end up coming out of our mouths. Sometimes we don't get those conversations out. But could you imagine if we lived a life of subtitles? Like you could actually see what people thought. We'd all be in big, big trouble, wouldn't we? But I would venture to say that if we were to take this idea of the tongue, communication, conflict, and if we were to spread it around this room to everybody that is in this room, we could probably find similar subtitles that we all either do for the positive or, unfortunately, to the negative. Did you know that from a counseling perspective, do you know the number one and number two cause for relationships to break down? Some of you might think it's finances. Finances is huge, but it's not finances. It's communication, number one, conflict resolution, number two. The number one and number two reason why relationships and friendships break apart is the inability to communicate effectively and the inability when communication breaks down and there's conflict, the inability to solve it. So, as we begin this series, we're going to be talking all things communication. And does the Bible, and when I say the Bible, do the writers who were inspired by God, do they have wisdom from God to give to us, to help us when we communicate at work, when we communicate to our kids, when we communicate to our spouse? So, in order to do so, for you type A's, let me tell you where we're going, okay? I'm in a motor today because there's a lot, but it's good, I promise. So, we're going to take a look at two different aspects. We're going to take a look at a historical, and we're going to take a look at a very practical. Now, there's a lot of front end on the historical. And the reason why I'm going to give you a lot of front end on the historical, for those of you who don't like history and you don't like a lot of this, just stay with me. And I promise, I'm going to teeter, but I won't get to boring. I promise, okay? So we're going to hit historical. And then when we turn to practical, here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you a test to see what type of communicator you are. We then are going to take a look at the most common communication mistakes that we can make. So make sure your phones are ready with pictures, okay? Then at the end, we're going to build everyone back up because we're all going to feel guilty and terrible about ourselves. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come right back up and we're going to give you tips on how to be a better communicator. We're going to do it all within 30 minutes, I promise. Okay. So with that being said, let me introduce Paul, whose name was Saul. Saul hated Christians. Those of you that are Bible study students, you know this. Hated Christianity. And then Jesus impacted his life, met him on a road, changed his life. So then Saul's name was changed because he didn't want to be known, and Jesus didn't want to be known by his old self, so he had a new name named Paul. And Paul wrote most of the New Testament. Paul traveled on missionary journeys all over that area to be able to spread the good news about Jesus Christ. And so Paul, right now in the book of Acts, this unpacks some of the history that you need to know and I need to know to be able to understand the anchor passage of communication that we're going to get to. So let's begin in Acts chapter 19, beginning in verse 1. Take a look with me. Paul said this: while Apollos was at Corinth, Apollos was a teacher, a pastor at the new ecclesia in Corinth. While Apollos was at Corinth, Paul then left and he took the road through the interior and he arrived at the city of Ephesus. And there he found some other disciples. My wife and I, about a month ago, we had the privilege of being able to walk in the city of Ephesus. We actually stood in the largest excavation site that we've ever been into. It's massive. It's huge. For those of you who wonder if the Bible is relevant, it is, because you're standing in history. And as Paul begins to unpack this city, we can see geographically what it looks like. Some of you are like, well, Terry, tell us what it looks like. Well, let's take a look at the overlay of the city that sits there today. This is the on-top view of the current city of Ephesus. Now, it is a lot of ruins, but they are well marked out and well preserved. You see on the left-hand side that theater. That is the largest amphitheater in history. in the world, seating 25,000 people. You could see it today if you stood there. The way that it's designed, you see the harbor road is a road that heads to the sea. It heads to the sea, and you can stand right on it, and you can look right at the shore. It was a port city. Now, when my wife and I entered, we entered from the top right. And as we entered, we look up on top of a hill, and you see that little tiny picture of a temple up top? That is called and known as one of the 7 ancient wonders of the world. It is the Temple of Artemis. And so the Temple of Artemis, now this is fascinating. If you don't like history, this is juicy, okay? So you can lean in here. The Temple of Artemis celebrated and worshiped a goddess. That goddess, many called her Diana, that goddess was the goddess of fertility and the goddess who protected all from evil spirits. So I want you to imagine a port city, multicultural, lots of people, coming to a city that the main aspect of it is the Temple of Artemis. They would travel up, and if you look at the screen, you see agoras. There is a state agora, and there's another agora over there. Agora is a shopping area. So when they would enter in, they would go through the shopping area, and they would all be able to see the Temple of Artemis. And guess what? In the shopping area, they would buy amulets. They would buy bracelets. They would buy necklaces to protect them from the evil spirits. Did you know this? That in Ephesus, it was the most that Paul visited, the city where there was the most demonic and spiritual presence of a negative kind in any of Paul's journeys. You wonder why? When you have a temple that is on top, that has a goddess, that is the protector from evil spirits. It drew all kinds of people who were possessed, who were magicians and sorcerers. So there was all kinds of activity in the city of Ephesus. Now, for those of you getting ready to fall asleep, I did this purposely. Let me give you something juicy, okay? You ready? Did you know this? That at the Temple of Artemis, and if there's young children, make sure their ears are closed, that because it was the goddess of fertility, those that tended the temple, in other words, took care of it, were required to consistently, on a constant basis, have sex. Did you also know that if you were struggling with infertility, you would make a pilgrimage and come to the city of Ephesus, and you would go up to the top of that hill, and you would have sex in public at the temple in the hopes that you would become pregnant? Now, I say this because I want to transplant you into the culture of the day. This is what's happening at the city of Ephesus. And Paul arrives. And as he walks through, he sees people speaking demonic messages. He sees sorcerers making things happen. He sees people believing in all kinds of things and worshiping the Temple of Artemis, needing protection from the evil spirits. So Paul then goes down the street, and if you look at this map, if you come down from the various baths to the State Agora to the Temple of Domitian, and you go down that road to the left, and you go to the Celsus Library. You see that on the bottom screen? The Celsus Library actually it was the most pieces that were there. It had fallen. They have put it back up, the original pieces. This is what the library looks like today, and I took this picture. And it just gives you an idea. That is there today. Paul walked to this library, and to the left of this library, which I'll show you a picture of, there's the library, and to the left is known as the lecture hall of Tyrannus. Paul stood on this lecture hall. Now, some of you might say, well, what's a lecture hall? If you were here at Easter, you saw me give a message about Paul standing on Mars Hill next to the Acropolis. And all the philosophers and intellectuals of the world would stand there, and they would debate all the wonders of the world, all the theologies of the world, what is right, what is wrong, and it was a debate. Well, in Ephesus, this was that location. They would stand in the lecture hall of Tyrannus, and they would debate what is truth, what is not truth, what are gods, what are they not. Paul goes over here and he stands up here and he begins to preach about the good news of Jesus Christ. Now, if you're falling asleep, don't, because this place is the most that Paul's ever experienced of evil spirits, demonic possession, where exorcism is needed, where crazy stuff is happening. So Paul looks, now by the way, I'm about to add a little to the gaps of Scripture, okay? This is not biblical. This is Terry's interpretation. So again, don't look and say, Pastor Terry is teaching not the Bible. No. I'm just filling in some gaps, wondering what might have happened. So all of a sudden, Paul is there, and he's preaching. And Paul, he decides, this is biblical, by the way, Paul decides to take a couple of cloths, and he goes ahead, and he asked God the Father, now this is not recorded, but I'm sure Paul looked up to heaven and said, Jesus, there's a lot of freaky stuff happening here. And they're not listening to a word I have to say because all this freaky stuff is happening. You got magicians, you got sorcerers, you got amulets, you got all this stuff. So Jesus, you want me to spread your good news. So I need to fight power with power. So Jesus, right now, I need to go ahead and I need to grab their attention. So Lord, I pray for supernatural power to be able to heal. I pray for supernatural power to do things that will grab their attention. So Paul took a couple of cloths. He then laid his hands on the cloths. He then told individuals who had sick people at their house, this is biblical, by the way, you can look it up, and he went and he had them take the cloths and go into their homes, and when the sick person touched the cloths, they were healed. And all of a sudden, these people were like, oh my gosh, that's power we've never seen before. That's greater power than anything we've seen. We need to start paying attention to this guy named Paul. So now the crowd is into it. The crowd starts talking about Paul. They start talking about Jesus. People are starting to receive the gospel and accept the gospel. And we continue in 19 verse 18. Take a look. This is Acts. Many of those who believe now came and openly confessed what they had done. I had sex at the temple of Artemis. I worshiped evil spirits. I performed sorcery. God forgive me, and I confess. Then a number who had practiced sorcery brought their scrolls together and burned them publicly. I'll explain this. When they calculated the value of the scrolls, the total came to 50,000 drachmas. In this way, the word of the Lord spread widely and grew in power. Do you know how much 50,000 drachmas was in that current time period? Millions of dollars. Now some of you are like, what kind of scrolls were they? This is fascinating. They were called the Ephesian letters. And the Ephesian letters were the goddess of Artemis blessed spells to protect you when you are traveling back to your home from evil spirits. Spells that you could chant. They were sorcery books that were meant to protect them from evilness, and they were worth millions of dollars. And so when these people accepted Jesus Christ and were convicted, they took multi-million dollars worth of Ephesian letters, it's recorded in history, by the way, and they burned them in front of everybody in the city. You want to grab people's attention? You do that. So Paul is standing there, and he sees that, and he continues in Acts chapter 20, because he's about to leave, and I want you to see what he says. He says, look, now that you have understood this, keep watch over yourselves and all the flock of which the Holy Spirit has made you overseers. All right, you all now believe. Now you need to watch yourself because there's a whole lot of freaky stuff going on here, and be careful. The Holy Spirit has made you overseers. Be shepherds of the church of God, which he bought with his own blood. I know that after I leave, savage wolves will come in among you and will not spare the flock. Even from your own number, men will arise and they will distort the truth in order to draw away disciples after them. So, be on your guard. Remember that for 3 years, I never stopped warning each of you night and day with tears. Now, pause. We're about to get to the anchor passage and we're about to get to the practical. You ready? I told you I was going to teeter to boredom, right? Well, here's one last thing you need to understand. In the city of Ephesus, it was a port city. And how many of you through history, through your childhood, you remember what you thought about in port cities? Had a lot of sailors, right? And you know what sailors like to do, right? How many of you ever watched the cartoon Popeye? Remember Popeye? If you're under the age of 35, Popeye was this really guy, and when he drank spinach, he had a tattoo. It was amazing. Anyway, do you remember Brutus? Brutus was this big sailor who was not a highly intellectual communicator, straight to the point, loud, and sometimes, even in the cartoon, what came out of Brutus's mouth was not truth. Do we know a lot of people like that? The reason why I bring it up is Ephesus was known for their debates. If you stood in the agoras of Ephesus, you didn't have to have fact or truth. You could just stand, and what mattered was whoever won the argument, whether it was truth or not. It's like political debates today. It's a joke, by the way. Anyway. So if you stood in the agora and you debated with someone and you outspoke them, even if they said, but that's not true, doesn't matter. because truth really didn't matter. It was really more about who was most influential. So Paul looked at all of them and said, look, be on your guard. You've got wolves that are coming in, and they're going to out-debate you. They're going to outmatch you. They're going to try to debate you in the forum and make you look silly. So be on guard. Paul leaves this port city. And then he's going to write a letter because he wants to encourage those that had just came to know Jesus. And we get to chapter 4 of this letter to this city. And it focuses on communication. And the reason why I gave you this, all this history, is for you to understand and really own what he writes to all of us. Because isn't it true that we have sailors all around us? Isn't it true that we have mistruths all around us? Isn't it true that we have people following different things and believing in different things and communicating that it's awesome, it's incredible, it will change your life, just do this. And we have so many people who don't know the truth, who are following a whole lot of idols. And so it affects us even today. So Paul writes to them to encourage them and charge them. And this is what he says in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 29. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. Now, we're going to come back to this a few times, but right now we're going to focus on that it may benefit those who listen. Paul really is amazing. He gets to the heart of something, right? This is uncommon in biblical times. Communication, many times for us, even in 2025, is about, I have something I want to say and I want to communicate it to you. That's what we think about when we think about communication. But has anybody ever stopped to say, before you think about what you want to say, have you ever thought about, is what I'm communicating actually benefiting the person that I'm about to talk to? And if the answer is no, maybe I just need to hold my tongue. We're going to have really fun really quick. Do you know where that phrase come from, hold my tongue? That actually came from the 14th century. It was actually a real thing. So instead of describing what it is, I want to illustrate it, all right? Here we go. We're going to do an exercise. I'm going to have you look at the person next to you. And what I want you to do is I want you to say hi, even if you know them. Hi, my name is blank, and fill in your name. But when you look at them and when you make that statement, you have to hold your tongue still. So everybody do it on the count of 3. You ready? 1, 2, 3. Do it now. Now you know where that came from. You all sounded like a jumbled mess. It's not easy to talk with your tongue still, is it? Well, believe it or not, in the 14th century, that was an actual physical activity. That's where it came from. They would actually tell people, hold your tongue still. We don't want to hear any more from you. And they would literally, kids, hold your tongue still. If you want to talk, you have to hold your tongue still. And they would try to communicate, and they can't communicate. And so, isn't it true that the type of communicator you are matters? So to understand the how of communication, one must first understand the what. So here's the question. What kind of communicator are you? Okay? So I'm going to give you 4. You ready? And by the way, you might be a mixture. You might be one specifically. So let's just have a little fun. Now, when I call this out and you're like, oh, I know this is me, don't worry. Everyone has positives and negatives. Okay? So here we go. The first type of communicator is your analyticals. All right? Right now, who thinks they're an analytical? Raise your hand. I always love it because the analyticals some are really proud analyticals. Yep, that's me, and I love it. And some of you are like, I don't want to admit it. I get picked on all the time. So, analytical communicators. Let's look at the positives. Emotion doesn't affect their communication. It's really great to go to an analytical who is not swayed by emotion. Specifics and hard logic are their specialty. They like to ask a lot of questions. They want all the data. They want all the details. They are not swayed by your tears. I don't care. Leave them at the doors. I just want the facts. Give me the facts. So, analyticals are great in certain circumstances because they will see right through the emotion. Here's the negative. Ready? They seem cold and distant, and they have no sympathy. None whatsoever. If you want a hug, don't go to them. If you want them to make you feel better, don't go to them. How many of you are married to an analytical? Wait, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. That would be bad. That would be bad. All right? So, think about it. Are you an analytical? You ready? All right, here's number 2. Number 2, intuitive. Okay? Intuitive, here are the positives. The positives are they're a visionary and they're a dreamer and they're straight to the point. Some of you are like, is that a visionary and dreamer straight to the point? Oh, yeah. You ever been in a meeting with someone where you're sitting there and there's a problem and you're trying to come up with an idea and they're like, I got it. I know it. No, I got it. No, it's perfect. You're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to do this. And when you do that, it's going to solve this, 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 and this. And then it's going to be even better than what we thought about. We just need to make sure that we do this, 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 and this. Done. Got it. And someone says, well, what about it? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's great. It's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. No. I promise you, it's going to work. It's going to work. It's going to work. It's going to be amazing. Okay? Straight to the point. Cut everything out. Straight to the point. I got it. It's there. Here's the negative. They have a lack of patience and a lack of detail for specifics. How many of you have a dreamer in the house? Yeah, but what about, it doesn't matter. Just dream with me. Okay, great. I'll dream with you. When you want to come back to Mother Earth, I'll just have a conversation with you. All right, so there you have your analytical. There you have your intuitive. Number 3, functional. What's functional? Functional. Positives. They love the fine details. They're well thought out and ordered. I love this, giving this example. If you ever want to know a functional person, it's when you make copies, and all of a sudden when they look at the copies, there's like 600 copies there. And they look at the paper clip on each, and the paper clip is there. And when they look, they're like, the only problem though is the paper clip, because when there's a lot of pages, and when they open, the paper clip might fall off, and that's not really great for them. So we need to redo every single one of them. There's 600. Yes, I know, but it matters because it'll make it better. I'll just do it myself. It's fine. I'll just do it myself, and I'll just do that. And then when they staple it on the wrong side, and they do 600 more copies. And then they realize, well, this is terrible because they can't open it the right way, so we're just going to have to recopy all of them. Functional, they are fine detailed. It doesn't matter the general. What matters is that we need to get this right. Very detailed, thought out, ordered. Here's the negatives. Sorry, they're boring. And they will lose other people's attention with their functionalness. By the first copy, I'm out. You want to play in the world of 1,200 copies, you go for it, but I'm over here. I'm not dealing with that. I ain't got time for that. I ain't got time for it. No, it's over here. No, that's fine. You're really excited about this 550th copy. Great for you. Awesome. I'm over here. Functional. All right? Some of you are mad. You're like, I was really excited about my functionalness until he said that. Number 4. Personal. Before we reveal this, I love this. Because in church, isn't it true that when we say there's 4, some of you you see the first 3 and they're like, ooh, there's a negative, there's a negative, there's a negative. The 4th one must be a real good one. And then I reveal personal. They're like, ooh, this must be where this is the perfect communicator. I'm this one. This is what I'm going to be. Okay, be careful. Okay? So number 4 is personal. Let's look at the positives. Positives, value emotional language, values connection. They're a good listener. They solve conflict. Some of you are like, yep, that's me. Yep, it's the good one. It's the best one. Be careful. Negatives. May be seen as touchy-feely. Others might get frustrated by strong emotional focus. These are the type of individuals that never met a problem they didn't love to lean into. How many of you have that friend that it doesn't matter? She is friends with 27 people who have 27 different bags of problems. And they are the person to call because they will listen to you for 3 hours. They will hug you. They will hold you. They will cry with you. They love eating it. No, give me more. Feed me your problems. I just love to be there for you. And it's great. Emotionally, it's great. However, there's only 24 hours and 7 days a week. And if all you do is live in the emotions of others, you never get anything done. God bless you. So there's personal communication. Those are the 4 types of communicators that you might fall into. You might be a hybrid, you might be both. But it's important to know what you are. Because when you know the negatives of your style, you understand what others are dealing with. If you were on my staff, you will hear me, and I didn't used to be like this, but I will apologize more times than not and say, I'm sorry, I'm a pastor, I talk a lot. And I will say that because it's true. I like to talk. So some of you just go talk to the hand. Just do it. It's okay. Now, we're going to go back to the anchor passage because in order to benefit others, you have to first understand the what. You have to understand you. Now we're going to lean into the mistakes that we make in communication. So let's look at the anchor passage because Paul brings this up. Take a look. He says, look, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths. Don't make any communication mistakes. Look, you just came to Christ. You have a world of people with a lot of different opinions. Don't stick your foot in your mouth. And so, I like to say the single biggest problem in communication, it's right here, promise, is the illusion that it's actually taking place. Isn't it true that many people talk at people and think that they've gotten through? How many of you ever walked into a lunch or a meeting, you leave thinking it went awesome, it went great, I was of such a value to these people, and then you hear the gossip rumor and they go, it was terrible, it was awesome, she didn't help me at all, and you're like, I don't understand. It's a communication mistake. So, here are many different communication mistakes. You ready? Here we go. Communication mistakes. Number one, assuming. Assuming is one-way communication, waiting for your turn, not listening. If you are an assumer, what you do is, okay, sit down, you're having a conversation, fifth word in, you've already diagnosed it, you have the problem solved, and they don't need any more words. I'm just going to solve it for them right away. We need to shut this down. And so usually an assumer is an interrupter. It's like, oh, okay, I got you. And they're like, will you just listen to me? Sure. Okay, you're done yet? Like, I understand. I got the point. Let me. That's an assumer, okay? Selective listening, multitasking, and half paying attention. Now, there are some of you that are great multitaskers, and you can do this. I cannot. And so a mistake that you can make is trying to do something and trying to pay attention. It can frustrate communication. Number three, yelling. The loudest wins. Or, as I like to say it, you're Italian. Number four, defensiveness, only looking from your point of view. Do you remember what Paul said before? He said, for the benefit of others. So how can we be an effective communicator if all we do is think of our point of view? What if we actually listen to Paul, step back and say, now, when I say this and this, how are they going to receive it? Could you imagine if we did that with our kids? Before we emotionally respond in the moment, imagine if we pause, imagine if we think, all right, now if I say this, if I ground them for the rest of their life, how will I be able to feed them? If I lock them in their room, we have to feed them. So how am I going to, boy, if I ground them for the rest of their life, that means I have to take care of them. That means they won't have a job. Okay, this plan doesn't work. So imagine if we actually step back. Here's another one. How many of you have criticism in your home? Kills communication. And many of us are wired differently, but if you're a critiquer, be careful. It's okay to critique. Critiquing is for the building up or the constructivity of the situation. Criticism is intended to point things out and tear down. So you got to be careful with criticism. Contempt, showing emotional resentment. Contempt kills communication. Okay, here's another one. Silence. How many of you have someone in the home where you're sitting there and something happens and you're like, okay, we need to talk about this. I don't want to talk about it. Or how many of you get into an argument and someone says, we'll talk about this later, and you never talk about it? Silence kills communication. It buries it. It builds walls. And so if you're a silence person, it's okay in the moment not to respond. It's okay to say, let's agree to disagree, and we could talk about this later. But that later must happen, and it must happen quick. It can't be 7 years later. It has to be, we could talk about this after dinner. We could talk about this tomorrow after breakfast. We can have lunch this week to discuss it. But it has to happen. Silence kills communication. Faking, pretending that you understand. Oh, got it. And really, you just want to move it along because you don't care. Yep, understood. Got it. Here's one. Unspoken, unrealistic expectations. Holding someone up to a standard they will never believe or be a part of or can never attain because only Jesus can. And secretly holding that in and secretly getting frustrated, secretly getting angry every time they don't meet your unrealistic expectation. And the only way for you to get rid of that unrealistic expectation is to communicate it and then to be able to seek advice from others to see if it's actually real. Okay? Paul then goes to this, and we got to land the plane. You ready? He says the same thing. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. Many of us want communication, stronger communication. And do you know what communication does between two people? It builds intimacy, not just physical intimacy, but it builds intimacy, connection with others. And intimacy has to be intentional. You don't just build relationships and friendships and have them happen. You have to be intentional about spending time and getting to the point. Now that we all feel guilty, because all of us have fallen guilty to those things, now it's time to pick you up before you leave. You ready? Because Paul says we need to build one another up. So how can we do that? Here are some tips to build one another up. Ready? 1, get to the point. And 1 goes with 2, stay on topic. Oh, Terry, what do you mean by that? How many of you have started an argument or you started a roll of communication and 2 hours later you don't know what you were arguing about? It's because you got off on a rabbit trail and you started bringing up the past and started bringing up the friends and started bringing up moments that have nothing to do with what you were communicating about in the moment. So get to the point of the moment. Don't deviate. Stay on topic. Choose a good time to talk. By the way, having really, really difficult conversations at 10 o'clock at night before you go to bed is a terrible time to do that. So choose a time that you both can be emotional ready. And by the way, some of you might pick a moment where if you know your spouse well enough, you think about, you know what, right now would not be the good time to bring this up because I don't think that it will go well. I'm going to wait for a moment where we're both relaxed and we could maybe absorb this. Have an open mind. Take a break. Sometimes you have to say, and Jennifer and I, you can ask my wife. She's in the kids area, so when you go back, feel free to ask her. And tell her I said this. One of the best things that we ever got was to look at each other's eyes when we're getting into communication and we're having impasse, to be able to look at one another and say, you know what, we're not going anywhere with this. Let's agree to disagree right now. I love you, and we'll come back later and talk about it. Sometimes you got to take a break. Just take a break, okay? Next. Proverbs 18:21 says this. No, Proverbs 18:21 says this about that. The tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. So it has the communication to build up or it has the communication to tear down. Number 6, listen with empathy. I tell my staff all the time, it's my weakest point. I, as a pastor, have to manufacture, and I don't do that flippantly, but I am a happy-go-lucky, lucky charm world pastor. I am the glass is half full. It's going to be great. That's me. When you have a death in the family and I need to come by and put my arm around you, I don't like negativity. I don't like a negative situation. It's not my wiring. I like positive. I like happy. Going into that, I have to work really hard as a pastor to manufacture a weakness of mine to be able to come in, to be able to empathize, to be able to put my arm around you, to be able to love you in the moment and actually feel the moment. That is something that pastors all have to work on in different strengths. So you can't just say, that's not me. No, we all have to work. And so listen with empathy. James 1:19 says this, my dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. We have our final list, and then I'm done. Number 7, clarify what you're talking about. And one of the ways you clarify in communication is saying, so what I hear you saying is this, and repeat it to them. Clears up communication. Speak their language. Use body language. That's not my problem. I'm pretty good at that. Pay attention. Understand that your words matter. And at the end of the day, it takes 2. The sad thing is, in biblical counseling, and I've counseled 250 to 300 couples in my lifetime, I could tell you within the first 15 minutes if a couple is going to have any benefit or value from anything that I say. Because it takes 2. When you have 2 people sit on the couch and 2 people that are ready to receive and ready to try different methods, God can do anything and everything. But when you have one is eager, God give me, and the other is like, no, I don't care. It's not going to work. It takes 2. Communication takes 2. The great William Penn once said this about communication, and I'm done. He said this. Avoid company where it is not profitable or necessary, and in those occasions, speak little and last. Silence is wisdom where speaking is folly, and always safe. You know, some are so foolish as to interrupt and anticipate those that speak instead of hearing and thinking before they answer, which is uncivil as well as silly. If thou think twice before you speak once, you wilt speak twice the better for it. Better to say nothing than not to the purpose. And to speak pertinently, consider both what is fit and when is it fit to speak. In all debates, let truth be thy aim, not victory or an unjust interest, and endeavor to gain rather than to expose your antagonist. In all debates, let truth be thy aim. And here's where I close it. In the town of Ephesus, people debated and communicated, and they didn't care what was right or wrong. They just wanted words to come out. We are living in a society today where we are living in marriages that do that. We're living with parents that do that. We're living in a culture that does that. And what Paul says to you and I is it's time to put that aside, and it's time for us to communicate for the benefit of one another with the truth of ourselves and one another. It takes two, and if we're honest with ourselves, and if we truly want a positive communication, we will watch our words and our tongue. We will hold it. We will listen more. We will be empathetic because their value is priceless. So this week, what's one thing that you can do to show one another, a friend, a family member, that I actually care to speak truth and build our communication? Let's pray. God, thank you so much. Lord, it's a lot, I know. But God, I just pray, Lord, that you would bless your word. That God, thank you for the wisdom of Paul. Thank you for what he was really getting at. I thank you for the culture of Ephesus and God, how that reminds us sometimes of the culture of today. And God, I just ask and I pray, God, that marriages would flourish. I pray that relationships between fathers and sons, mothers and daughters would broaden. And Lord, may we follow your advice for communication so that you can receive the glory. In Jesus' name.